Pawnee, Indiana. So that might appear to be a quaint, kind of unassuming small town on the surface, but beneath its serene exterior lies a vibrant world brimming with eccentricity and charm. It's a place where the multitasked become grand adventures and the ordinary becomes extraordinary. All thanks to really its quirky government employees whose offbeat antics and heartfelt dedication bring the town's unique character to life. And with that, and welcome to the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, where we turn the complexities of leadership into clear, actionable insight. So I'm Scott, and joining me is our go-to leadership guru, Dr. Michael David Morales, aka Mo.
What's up, Scotty? Good to be on today. Let's get to it, man.
In case nobody recognized the name Pawnee, Indiana, I was referring to the very successful sitcom Parks and Recreation. So like most shows, it had a rough start. The first couple of seasons weren't the greatest, but it really picked up and kind of created this cult following. But in case you haven't taken the time to watch the show, okay, spoilers, all right, but it follows the adventures and mishaps of one Leslie Knope. So she's the deputy director of the Pawnee, Indiana Parks and Recreation Department. Knope truly embodies what we're going to talk about today. As the deputy director and later, I guess another spoiler alert, councilwoman, she isn't directly in charge of anything, but she doesn't really let that stop her from leading. In one episode, there's countless examples, but in one episode, Pawnee's town hall actually faced a disastrous situation with an outdated and malfunctioning heating system during a harsh winter. So being a Indiana resident myself, I can say that those winters can be pretty brutal. But anyway, all that to say, Knope takes matters into her own hands and organizes a fundraiser. She rallies local businesses to donate money and coordinates a volunteer crew to install the heating system. Sounds pretty boring, but of course, it's Parks and Recreation. So during that process, she also manages to set off the fire alarm, which causes this massive evacuation of the building, and then somehow manages to actually superheat the building so it becomes more similar to a sauna inside than actually comfortable to be in. But overall, really, her resourcefulness and dedication to leading kind of led to her success. And Knope ultimately chose to lead from where she was. And today we're really diving into that powerful topic. We're talking about lead from where you are. So Mo, get us started here. What exactly does it mean to influence without authority?
Yeah, thanks, Scotty. Well, first of all, if you haven't seen Parks and Rec, no need for telling people spoilers because, I mean, too bad if you have not seen it. That's your fault because it's one of the great shows ever to be on television. But today we're talking about influencing without authority. And so that's really about being able to sway decisions, guide actions, and inspire others without holding an actual formal position of power. So you don't need to be the CEO of your company. You don't even need to be a senior person or have a fancy title, but you can make an impact. So it's about leveraging relational skills. It's about listening deeply and correctly. It's about effective assertion. It's about self-awareness to create authentic connections, and it's about driving change.
One thing that came to my mind as I was thinking kind of where I was going to go with this intro, before I moved to Indiana, the only impression of Indiana I had was Pawnee, Indiana, which is a completely fictional place, believe it or not. But anyway, that's beside the point. But it really kind of feels like that idea of influencing without authority is just so important in today's collaborative work environment. So I know you've probably got some stories for us. So do you have those real world examples kind of showing people how they can lead effectively without, really forming, or I should say without that formal authority?
Yeah, I do. In fact, our first point today, Scott, is this. You need to build credibility and trust. So leaders who want to lead from where they are, they're all about trust. And so building that credibility, building that trust is key to you having influence in your workplace. Shocking, right? So take the example of Olga Romanios. She was a marketing manager at Philips Lighting, and she was tasked with selling products to architects and designers. And it was a completely new segment for the company. So Olga didn't have a formal authority over engineers or sales teams or anything, but she needed to convince these people. And so she had something even more influential in that whole thing, which was credibility. So what Olga did is she previously worked in sales and production. So she knew how to talk to people, obviously, and she understood challenges. She understood the needs because she'd been with them. Just like most of our leaders out there, you're doing the things that are important for your company. And so whoever you're leading, they're looking to you. Well, Olga was able to speak the language of the people that were looking to her. And so it just wasn't about imposing her own ideas, but she was genuinely looking to create value for everybody involved. And so this credibility allowed her to build trust, which was critical in influencing others to embrace the initiative.
And it kind of popped this into my head, but we hear so much today about and people are leaving jobs and bouncing to different jobs, and so that's really putting these people kind of in new places of work potentially a lot more often. So what kind of strategies then can an individual maybe employ to build credibility in a new segment or an area of work that they might have just stepped into?
Yeah, Maggie Wool over at betterup.com has an article that she wrote on this very subject, and it's called How to Build Trust in the Workplace. And she gives 10 effective solutions. The first one is value long-term relationships. Okay. If you want to have influence, you need to value long-term relationships, which is this. Trust requires long-term thinking. It might seem convenient in the moment to blame somebody else and make decisions that benefit you in the short term. But before you act, she says, think about how they might affect others and perceive you in the future. And so how many of us out there have really done that? We've done something for our own self-interest in the short term, but it ends up burning a bridge, or as George Costanza would say in Seinfeld when Jerry says, "So you're going to burn that bridge too?" And George just says, "Flame on." That's what a lot of us do. You end up hurting somebody else in your company. So don't look for the short term. Look for the long term. Value those long-term relationships. The second thing that Wool says to do is an easy one. Be honest. She says developing a reputation as somebody who is dishonest is one of the fastest ways to erode trust. She says always tell the truth, even if it's awkward. Don't give people an opportunity to catch you in a lie. The third one, and this is the last one that I'll give, that Wool says is this. Honor your commitments. How many people just don't honor their commitments today? It's like you said, it's easy to quit. Quiet quitting. I love that phrase. Quiet quitting, just leaving, saying I'm going to be somewhere, and then you just leave. And she says a trustworthy person does everything in their power to stick to agreements that they've made. And then she says, if you make a promise, follow through on it. Avoid making promises that you might not be able to keep. Don't promise the world to your people. Do what one of my mentors always told me to do. He says, Mo, you need to under-promise and over-deliver.
Really just popped two things into my head. First, I feel like as leaders, if we're going to honor our commitments, do honor them. But then two, it's honoring them well. And I can even think of times throughout my career where I committed to something, and then it's one of those things where it's like, oh shoot, I committed to that. And it's one of those things where it's like, I lost interest. I don't want to do this anymore. Maybe I'm not in the same mindset or mind frame, but it's that idea of if you step into those situations that you've already committed to without doing it well, you're going to lose out on that opportunity to influence. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. So one of the things that my parents taught me at a young age was, if you're going to do something, you got to do it. So for those of you out there who have played sports or were in the band or were in ballet or tennis lessons or whatever it was, and then you lose interest, you just need to stick to it. I remember my dad would tell me, you're not going to quit until the end of the season. Follow through on your commitments. So leaders, we've learned all these things from our parents, from communities, from sports, from music, from dance, whatever you've done. Be a person of your word, and it's really going to make a difference in you being able to lead others when it's time to lead from where you are all the time. Yeah.
It's just so interesting, really, how credibility can make such a difference, even without a formal title. And it really shows kind of that your and then how you relate to others can be just as powerful as actually having like that title or authority. It's crazy.
So that actually, Scott, brings us to our second point today, which is this. If you want to lead from where you are, you need to learn how to mobilize your allies. This is a crucial aspect of leading from where you are, because Simone Van Neer had experience at KLM, and KLM is an airline. It's international. In fact, I've flown in it several times with the military over the years. But she was a manager of distribution, catering, and board supplies. Right, she was assigned a really tough task of reducing the turnaround times for KLM and the aircrafts, with the goal that, if you're stuck in deadlock for years, as they were, because of conflicting interests with all the moving parts with food distribution and all the people that they had, they said, you got to fix this. And so Simone knew that she had to do this, but she wasn't great at it. It wasn't it wasn't her forte, right? So she couldn't do it alone. She had to find allies in higher positions who believed in her mission, which would help her get things done, right? If you ever need to get things done, what do? You got to have you got to know people in high places, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of her key allies ended up being the division's vice president, who not only supported her, but also helped her rally others behind the initiative. Can you imagine that? Having a supervisor, a boss, somebody with a lot of that kind of power saying, no, I believe in you and I'm going to help you rally. And so this network of allies gave Simone the leverage that she needed to break through the deadlock and achieve significant results for the company.
Pretty great story. So if we're thinking about then, our workplaces, some of us might not be as extroverted as me. And can we as leaders really identify and build relationships with potential allies? Like, are there any neon signs out there or specific areas that we should look to, or is it something different?
So, fear not if you do not have the extroverted gene. Fear not if you are not as extroverted as Scott Anderson here, because few are. But there's an article for the rest of us. There's an article, and it's titled 5 Ways to Build New Alliances at Work, right? And it's available on cornferry.com. But here's a couple of practical ways that you could start the ally making process. And the first one is this: meet people in other departments. So if you're at work and you are in an office in one part of the building, you need to get out of that office, right? If you're in a cubicle, even in the same office as other people, you need to get up from the cubicle and you need to walk around. Get out of your cubicle, get out of your office space, get out of your comfort zone is what I'm saying. But I learned from my mentors and the men and women who have coached me over the years, Mo, you got to get out of your office. What I learned from my best bosses, my best supervisors, is they would walk into other people's offices and just talk, right? And they would, and I've always valued those relationships of those supervisors that would come in and just sit down on my couch in my office and say, Mo, what's going on? So I try to do the same. The wrong thing to do is say, I am just so busy, I don't have time. It's all about the people. And so, you got to know that people are what's going to make you better. And so if you need to build alliances, the wrong time to build alliances is when something goes bad. You want to have those already established. Wherever I go, and this is a great thing for you to do, leaders, take the first couple of weeks, which is the most important time when you come into a new job, to schedule meetings, to walk into other people's offices, and just ask people, how are things here? I do that all the time, and I love doing it. And a lot of times people just look at me, they're like, Mo, what do you want to know? And I'm like, I just want to know, like, how is it here? What are you doing? How do we do things here? And you would be shocked. You would be amazed. People, they'll tell you. They'll tell you who's helpful and who to talk to. They'll tell you who's not helpful and who's not going to help you. They'll tell you what to avoid, what to do. It's gold. And so that's the first thing. Get out there, meet other people in other departments. The other thing is this. In this 5 ways to build new alliances at work, it's called reset with your boss. Go in there and say, hey, boss, whether it's day one or you've been there for 5 or 10 years, you can go in there and you can talk to your boss and say, I just want to let you know what's going on. I want to tell you what my objectives are and what we're doing. And I need to know, what do you expect from me? What are the deliverables? What do you need me to do? That will give you a ton of credibility with your boss, because that supervisor, whoever he or she is, they're going to know that you're trying to do things to get the job done. If you've got a busy supervisor, if you've got a busy boss, which most of us do, schedule a time. A lot of bosses are great, and you can just kind of knock on their door and go on, hey boss, you mind if I have a quick couple minutes? And they're always going to be busy. So you need to find a time to get in there and reset with your boss, whether you're brand new or whether you've been somewhere again for 5, 10, 20 years, and get on the same page with that person and let them know, hey, I'm here to do things right in the company. What can I do better? What am I doing well? How can I be helpful?
Of just how influence isn't just about an individual effort. It's about creating kind of like a coalition of supporters that can really amplify that impact that you can have.
That really brings us to our last point for today, and it's this. If you want to be someone who leads from where you are, it's this. You need to find common ground. And you need to know the non-negotiables, right? And I put that in parentheses. So with that third point, it's important to find common ground with everybody around you, whether it's your boss, your superiors, the people underneath you that are looking to you. One of my bosses once told me, he said, Mo, I'm going to teach you the difference between a job description and job responsibilities. Okay. Job description is what all of us have. We've all got something written, right? Scott, you have something written. I have something written. We've got a job description that says everything that we need to do. But what are the job responsibilities? It's everything else that we have to do. So we've all got responsibilities outside of our description. And I would argue those are sometimes the most important things. They're even more important than the description. Because who looks at the description? If that thing was probably written in your job, wherever you're at, if you're supervising others and it's got all these objectives, I'll bet you a lot of that stuff doesn't exist or it's a lot different now. So what you need to do is figure out what it means for you to live within those responsibilities. This is going to help you find common ground with everything that you have to do that help you make an impact. So Simone also began her initiative by asking key stakeholders what their no-go areas were, or the non-negotiable aspects of the project that they were working on. And so by understanding these, the things that she needed to stay away from, I was able to navigate around potential conflicts and focus on areas of common interest. And so this approach not only helped her avoid the unnecessary roadblocks, but it also built a stronger sense of collaboration within the team.
So collaboration, right? And sometimes collaboration. So then if we're talking about being a leader, so then how can a leader really effectively balance the need to respect those non-negotiables or those no-go areas with that goal of building collaboration?
It's important for leaders to get the team to buy into the values of the company. You see, we all have our own set of values. In fact, that's one of the first exercises that I go through with my clients. I ask them, what are your values? What do you believe in? Because that's going to change the way that you look for companies to work for and work with and the people that you want to hang out with. Because if you know your values, then when you go to get a job somewhere, then you can look and say, what's the company values? And then do my values, for the most part, they're not going to ever be 100%, right? If you do find the 100% values to values, then you're in a great spot. Don't ever leave. But most of us, the company values are probably pretty similar to what we're looking for. That's why we get our job there. I believe in the mission. I believe in the vision. I believe in the values. And so at some point, the company values are gonna push back at you onto one of your values, and you need to know whether or not that's a non-negotiable or not. So what are the things that you're not willing to give up? And there should just be just a few things, and that's usually your ideology, things that you believe in. Everything else, that's not necessarily how I would do it, but that's how the company does it. That's how I'm going to do it. That's what I mean when I say that. And so Isabel Loss, and who's a former business unit director at a large pharmaceutical company, she also emphasizes strategy because she often had to align teams across different geographies without any formal authority. Can you imagine that? Being part of this pharmaceutical company and say, I'm dealing with these people on the West Coast, these people on the East Coast, people all over the place, and all these different value systems, but she has to align the teams together. Isabel found out that the key to influencing all of these diverse teams was to focus on not what they didn't have in common, but Isabel learned how to focus on what they had in common. building relationships based on shared goals, which in turn made negotiation and collaboration a whole heck of a lot easier.
About being strategic in your approach, kind of knowing what's negotiable and then what isn't, and then really ultimately using that knowledge to then bring people together.
Absolutely. And so when you find that common ground and respect people and what their non-negotiables are, then you can avoid conflicts, and then you can end up creating a more united and motivated team. So leaders, here's a question for you: with the people that you work with and even your subordinates, do you know their non-negotiables? Do you know the things that you shouldn't or can't ask them to do because it's going to cause them to go against what they believe? You should really know that. You really need to understand everybody at all levels that impacts the way that you do whatever you do at work, and say, now, what am I going to do ever that's going to put this person in an awkward position? We don't want to put our people in those spots. So don't do that. Make sure that you really understand what those non-negotiables are, and do the extra work as a leader to find out the values of the people that you work with. And I'd write them down, because you're not going to remember everybody else's values and their value system. But as you have those intentional conversations, write that stuff down, and you're going to have a motivated team.
Back to all the conversations that we've had and really like a lot of the workplaces that I've been in, and just that thinking, man, if I don't think I've ever had anybody ask me what my non-negotiables are. And it's just,
wow, really?
Yeah. And I just even thinking about trying to write mine down and being like, man, I feel like there creates such a difference in a workplace, just knowing as a leader, like what someone can and can't do. Just thinking about diverse backgrounds, different cultures, different years of experience, like all of that, just absolutely just eye-opening. So, but
yeah,
if anybody has any question about whether they can lead from where they are after listening to this, well, then you didn't listen well enough. Read the show notes. Look at all the articles that we're putting in down below and everything. So, but really, it just comes down to building credibility, rallying allies, and finding that common ground are just things that our listeners can start using right now. So, Mo, before we kind of sign off here, we always end the same way here. You got any final thoughts for us?
I do. So leaders, just remember this. It's pretty simple. Influence doesn't require a title. It doesn't require actual formal authority. It just asks you to have the willingness to connect, to listen, and to lead with purpose. And so whether you're leading a team or you're just starting in a new role and you're looking to see, man, am I going to have influence in this company? Look at these principles and ask yourself, am I willing to do these things up front? Am I willing to do what it takes to lead from where I am? Am I going to build that credibility and trust? Am I willing to get out of my comfort zone and mobilize the allies? And from that, what is it going to take for me to find common ground with the people that I'm working with? Because when you do that, it's going to make a huge difference. It's going to make a huge impact, and you're going to change a lot of lives for the better. So,
and thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in today and for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you guys rate, review, and subscribe. You can connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and at our website, rtclc.com. Your guys' feedback just helps us so much connect with more leaders and bring you valuable insights. So until next time, lead with purpose and stay authentic.